This boy enters the classroom, catching the eye of everyone present. His name is Ji-hoon, and his classmates aren't looking at him in admiration. Instead, it's because he is the school's jerk and bully, whom everyone is afraid of because his father is a millionaire and the president of Gangda Industries. At that moment, Ji-hoon turns his attention to a spectacled young man named Lee. He constantly harasses him, mocking his studious, nerdy appearance and pouring his drink on him. Seeing this, the new student tries to intervene, but the voice of the girl sitting next to him stops him. She tells him not to get involved. Ji-hoon is a despicable person, and he will get into a lot of trouble if he dares to mess with him. Intrigued by the young man's identity, the new student starts to think for a few moments. Meanwhile, the bully continues to mock Lee, starting to take photos of him in his vulnerable state. The new student can't stand the situation, so he gets up and yells at Ji-hoon to stop. But the bully, knowing his power, ignores him and continues to taunt the young man. Just then, the new student snatches the drink from his hand. Ji-hoon looks at him with contempt. A few seconds later, the teacher enters the classroom. The protagonist stares at him, expecting him to do something about Ji-hoon, who is still mocking Lee. But, to his surprise, the teacher turns a blind eye and orders our hero to sit down, so the lesson can begin. At this moment, the boy realizes the immense power Ji-hoon holds in the school. Thanks to his father's influence, he has become untouchable, able to do whatever he wants, regardless of the feelings of those he harms. All of this fuels his intense anger. For the first time in the school's history, Ji-hoon gets a taste of his own medicine as our hero lands a powerful right punch to his jaw, knocking him to the ground. The rest of the students watch the scene, stunned by what just happened. The teacher rushes to defend Ji-hoon and sends them both to the principal's office. There, the bully receives all the nurses' attention, while our hero is beaten with sticks as punishment. Our hero's name is Park. He recently transferred to this school because his father got a good position at a large corporation, which, incidentally, is the same company run by the bully's father. An hour later, when both boys' parents are in the principal's office, the principal informs them that Park will be expelled immediately for his actions. However, Jang, Ji-hoon's father and the millionaire leader of Gangda Industries, interrupts the principal to say that won't be necessary, as Park's father is a valuable employee of his company, and he doesn't want this minor altercation to disrupt his people's lives. Therefore, he tells the young man that if he kneels before him and his son, and apologizes for what he has done, this whole problem will be resolved with a few weeks in detention. It seems Jang likes this kind of reprimand. Making people kneel reaffirms his power. However, Park refuses to do such a thing, as the only one who was wrong was Ji-hoon, for being a bully who mocks his classmates. Park's father, who has always been proud of the way he raised his son, stands by him and supports his decision not to kneel, which not only causes him to be expelled from school, but also results in the father being fired from his new position that he had only just secured. Later, while father and son are having a drink at a local bar, ideas begin to flow about what to do with their lives now that they have no job or schooling. It is here that Park tells his father they should open their own bar. Upon hearing this idea, his father's eyes light up. He has always wanted to have his own bar restaurant. It's something he's passionate about. Aside from being a machinery operator at Gangda Industries, over the next few days, the father and son set their plan in motion and managed to make some progress on their project. Then one night, as his father is returning home on his bicycle, he is hit by a drunk driver speeding down the wrong lane. His father ends up dead in the middle of the road. Shortly after, the police call Park to tell him they have captured the person responsible for his father's death. However, the culprit has paid a huge amount of money to keep the case from going to court. Therefore, they also offer the young man a lot of money to drop the charges. Hearing this, Park is devastated. It's highly likely his father's killer will get away with it just because he has money. Sue, who is by his side, carefully looks at the photos from the highway cameras and recognizes the car. It turns out that a few days ago, Ji-hoon was at school bragging about his new limited edition luxury car and invited her for a ride, but she refused. Park is enraged upon hearing this. He asks her if she is really sure of what she's saying. When she confirms she remembers it perfectly, Park storms out of the police station looking for Ji-hoon. His first stop is the hospital, where he fortunately finds Ji-hoon at the entrance smoking a cigarette. Ji-hoon has some minor injuries that will soon be nothing compared to what Park plans to do to him. Before Ji-hoon can react, the protagonist is already on top of him, beating him mercilessly. At one point, he grabs a rock from the ground, and before he can end the rich boy's life, Sue appears and convinces him to stop, just as the police show up and place him under arrest. Back at the police station, Park spends the next few days locked up until Chang appears to visit him and tell him an old story. It turns out he knew Park's father more than 20 years ago. They used to be friends, and that's why he deeply regrets his death and is willing to give Park a second chance. If he kneels before him and apologizes for hitting his son, Chang will arrange to have the charges dropped, and he can go free. Furthermore, he can work for him as cleaning staff at his company. Park, who is very proud, tells him his son deserved every blow, and if the police hadn't arrived, Chang would be the one in mourning right now. Hearing this, Chang leaves and pulls his strings to speed up the trial. When the time comes, his lawyer discovers the fact that Ji-hun killed Park's father while driving drunk. He plans to use this as a possible excuse for Park's actions and ask for him to be released on parole. However, Chang finds out about this. Consequently, he bribes the judge, ensuring the young man is sent to prison. After the verdict, Park is sentenced to 3 years in prison and is taken immediately to serve his sentence. Once in prison, we notice Park is much younger than the rest of the convicts, who don't waste time trying to humiliate and abuse the new guy. One of them wants Park to kneel and obey him, but the young man defends himself. Therefore, he ends up being hit in the leg, after which he receives a beating. The next day, Park receives a visit from Sue, who informs him that Chang has offered to pay for her university tuition, all because she was the one who stopped Park that night when he was ready to kill Ji-hun. Park congratulates her, saying it's a great opportunity, and thanks her for stopping him that night. In reality, he didn't want to become a murderer. 2 years pass quickly, and the protagonist is released early for good behavior. Sue, having heard of his release, invites him to Itaewon, a nearby city where she is currently finishing her studies. She wants them to meet up and catch up on their lives. When Park arrives in Itaewon, he realizes this city is unlike any other. Here, people celebrate Halloween like in America, which makes it very colorful and vibrant. He ends up wandering the streets for a while until he meets Sue, who leaves him speechless. The young woman has changed a lot. She is no longer the same thin, shy girl he knew in school. Now she has beautiful hair and dazzles with her confidence. During their conversation, Sue tells him she will graduate soon and start working for Jenga. Park, meanwhile, says he will follow his father's dream. He will open his own restaurant and has chosen Itaewon to do it. We travel to the future, exactly 7 years, and see that Sue is now a full-fledged businesswoman at Jenga Industries and holds a good position. As he wanders the city streets, he comes across a bar that is about to open and recognizes the name on the facade. Not far from there, Park finds himself breaking up a fight between a girl and an older woman. The woman tries to slap the young girl, but Park grabs her by the arm. Just then, the girl attacks first, slapping the woman before fleeing. This young woman's name is GCO, who turns out to be a famous local influencer. She enjoys playing pranks from time to time, and this time she was dealing with the consequences of her actions. At that moment, Park realizes that GCO was not alone. There was a boy hidden nearby recording everything on his phone, and when it was time to flee, they both got into a taxi together. This boy's name is Jang, who is in love with Ji-seo and follows her everywhere. Furthermore, he supports all her crazy ideas for creating content for her social media, where she is close to reaching 1 million followers. The next day, Jang and Ji-seo are riding a scooter while she records content of their ride through the city. Just then, a child crosses their path, and Jang has to brake abruptly. Not noticing the situation because she is smiling at the camera, Ji-seo goes flying and lands on a young man wearing a mascot costume and handing out restaurant flyers. This turns out to be Park, who was advertising his restaurant. A bear costume was all he could afford with the money he had left. There, Ji-seo recognizes him from the previous night and thanks him for defending her. His performance was perfect for boosting the video's likes. Just then, Park seems to feel unwell and faints. Ji-seo calls Jang to help her, and they manage to get Park to the hospital. There, they tell him his fainting was due to excessive exhaustion. Therefore, they advise him to rest for a few days. Afterward, Ji-seo thanks him once more, to which Park replies that if she really wants to show her gratitude, she should call her friends and visit his bar. However, Ji-seo considers herself a social media star and won't visit a second-rate bar. That night, Park is in his bar, which is empty. He fears that customers will never come, so he goes out to tour the nearby bars, where he plans to do some advertising. Not far from there, Ji-seo is with her friends at one of the Jenga bars. However, when they ask for her ID, it turns out she is underage, so they deny her entry. Angry, the young woman walks the streets and stumbles upon Park's bar, where she decides to try her luck and hands over her fake ID. The manager immediately notices it's not real, but seeing that the bar has no customers, he decides to take the risk and let them in. Meanwhile, Park arrives at a newly opened bar and runs into Sue, who has been assigned as the new manager of the place by Chang himself. There, Park and Sue walk the streets for a while. As they talk, the protagonist confesses that the business isn't doing well, so she asks him to show her his bar. Maybe she can give him some advice to improve his service. When they arrive at the bar, Sue recognizes Ji-seo, to whom she had denied entry at her own bar just minutes earlier. She knows Ji-seo isn't old enough to drink, so she excuses herself and tells Park they will have to postpone their chat until later. Inside the bar, one of Ji-seo's friends is completely drunk and causing trouble. Park agrees to let Sue leave and promises to call her later. Then, as Sue walks away from the bar, she calls the police and reports Park, informing the authorities of a bar serving minors. At the police station, the manager sticks to the fake ID story, but the officers threaten to lock everyone up. Just then, Ji-hun appears and informs the officers that he has come for his brother, Jang, who is an heir to the Jenga fortune and shouldn't be arrested. Upon hearing this, the officers immediately release Jang and his friends. Before leaving, Ji-hun turns to Park with an arrogant look and offers his help, causing Park to become enraged and end up being subdued by the officers. The night ends with the bar being fined and forced to close for 70 days. Upon leaving the police station, Ji-seok is waiting for Park to talk to him. However, Park is furious about what happened and doesn't want to hear his excuses. At that moment, Ji-hun appears again and starts mocking Park, reminding him of his father's death. The only thing Ji-hun wants is for Park to hit him so he can press charges and send him back to prison, but the young man stays calm and, with just a couple of sentences, manages to freeze the villain's blood. Park tells him that while he was in prison, he had enough time to think about his revenge, which will culminate when he kills him with his own hands. Therefore, he should prepare himself, because sooner or later, that day will come. Shortly after, we see Ji-seok walking home when a young man appears, telling her he's her fan and wants to buy her a drink. However, she rejects him, so the boy becomes very insistent, trying to grab her by the arm. She manages to break free and runs, but the subject starts chasing her down the street. A few minutes later, the girl manages to reach a public restroom where she screams for help. In that instant, she sees a young man with his back turned, trying to use the restroom. It turns out to be Park, who intervenes and gives the harasser a beating. After this, Ji-seok is smitten by Park's valiant act and promises to help him improve his bar, using all her social media influence to attract more customers. On the other hand, we see Sue, who is being congratulated by Chang. He has found out that Park's bar has been closed and that she helped make it happen. Back with Ji-seok, she has invited Park for a drink to thank him for saving her. There, she tells him some things he needs to improve about the bar. First, he should fire Hyun, his cook, since she has no talent and is also a trans woman, which will bring bad publicity. Hearing this, Park gets upset and stands up abruptly, though he ends up collapsing on the floor. Therefore, Ji-seok approaches him, and, seeing him calm, gets carried away by her feelings, and tries to kiss him. He wakes up before this happens. The next day, the girl returns to the bar and apologizes for what she said. However, the rest of the plan is still in motion, so she has brought reinforcements. Jang, the problematic boy from the other night, wants to work for Park. With this in mind, they ask Hyun to prepare some food and take the opportunity to point out what she is doing wrong and can improve. Ji-seok knows nothing about cooking, but she knows how to sell, and presentation is very important. Furthermore, the bar needs more light. It's impossible to take a decent selfie with so much darkness, so they also remodel parts of the place. Next, her social media campaign begins, where her loyal followers show up at the bar that night to support and try the food. During the night, Jang feels very loved by his new group of friends. When the night ends, he goes home, where he reprimands his father for how badly he has treated him all these years. Chang tells him he doesn't care if he has felt unloved. Just like his brother Ji-hoon, both are disposable, and he doesn't care if he leaves and never comes back. Hearing this, Jang takes his things and leaves home. He then uses the little money he has to rent a place near the bar, where he is happy working with his new friends. Later, we see Chang meeting with Sue. He tells her about the future of the company and presents the idea of marrying her off to his son, Ji-hoon. This way, she can be at the forefront of the company and won't let Ji-hoon ruin everything with his irresponsible life. While walking by Sue's bar, Chang notices the huge line in front of Park's bar, which causes him some annoyance. He asks if Sue will remain loyal to him when the opportune moment arrives. Inside the bar, People are having a great time trying the cocktails that Choi prepares. However, Ji-suk notices that many are not enjoying the food. When the night ends, she goes to Park to tell him they must do something about Hyun. Park, who had also noticed this situation, takes a month's salary and hands it to Hyun in front of everyone. They all think it's her severance pay, and she has been fired. But Park clarifies that this is for her to buy new ingredients and practice. They have been friends for years, and he needs her to become the best chef in Itaewon, and he will be there to support her. In another part of the story, we see a group of girls stalking Ji-suk on social media. It turns out these girls are her haters and were the ones who called the police the night at the bar. The person Soo actually called was Ji-eun, to inform him that his brother was drunk and causing trouble. These girls show up in front of the bar to ambush Ji-suk. When she finds out they were the ones who caused the problem for her beloved Park, she lunges at them and slaps them, with the leader taking the worst of it. The next day, Ji-suk has very good news. It turns out she has managed to get a TV channel to talk about the bar on a show about trendy places. And that night, when Park goes to the channel, it turns out Ji-eun is in charge. He only did it to mock them and give them false hope. As Park returns to the bar with Ji-suk, he tells her not to worry, that it wasn't her fault, and now they must focus on continuing to do things well. Soo appears there, wanting to talk to Park, so Ji-suk leaves. Jealous, the protagonist takes this opportunity to confess his feelings to Soo. However, although she also feels the same way about him, she feels conflicted because of her job. She knows she can't be on both sides and is committed to her career. After this talk, Park walks Soo to the bus stop. Before she leaves, he declares that he will destroy Gangda Industries. That way, she won't have to choose and can love him without restrictions. A few days later, Park makes a very important call to an old friend, who turns out to be Lee. The boy Gi-eun humiliated daily in school until Park defended him. It turns out that over the years, Park has been investing money with Lee in Gangda Industries. They both took advantage of the public scandals that Gi-eun caused, buying shares when the price dropped due to these scandals. And when Chang managed to recover and raise the price, they kept the profit. They repeated this for years, as Gi-eun was always a problematic son who appeared on television every month with a new scandal. Because of this, Chang took away his privileges and put Soo in charge. Now that we know Park is not broke and his revenge plan began while he was in prison, we return to the bar, where things are going very well, and they have decided to expand the team. The first to appear is Tony, who is American but has come to Korea to find his father. Hearing this, Ji-suk tells Park that a bilingual employee would be very useful, as it will attract foreigners, so they hire him. We switch to the other side of the story, where we see Chang being informed that a mysterious investor has bought more company shares, and now has a significant stake. Thinking it's a hostile takeover, Chang orders an investigation into the name of this important shareholder. Upon discovering it is Park, he ends up laughing frantically and tells his assistant not to worry, as he will settle this matter that very day. A short while later, he enters the bar, where everyone is surprised to see him, especially Jang, his son, who had not told him he worked there. Following this, Park sits down with him, and they have a tense conversation. Chang warns him not to try to take away his company, as he doesn't want him as an enemy. In response, the protagonist says the only reason he invested in the company is because he knew Chang was ruthless and it was a good investment. Chang laughs at the compliment he just received from the young man, and tells him he has been warned. He better not try anything with his shares, or he will be declaring a war he won't win. At that moment, we see a flashback of Park when he was in prison. He received a visit from Lee, who had come to thank him for defending him, and to tell him that Ji-eun had left him alone since that day. In that instant, Park tells him he did the right thing and is glad to see he is well. He also tells him that when he gets out of prison, he will do everything possible to destroy Gangda Industries and create a company that is much better. Immediately, Lee interrupts him to say he will study investments and business administration and wants to help him with that plan. From that day on, Park gained his greatest partner and gave him the money he had received from his father's life insurance to invest in Gangda, thus increasing their power until the time was right. Back in the present, Lee meets with Park to tell him he has someone very important to introduce him to. He takes him to Mrs. Kang, who is a very large investor in Gangda and has her mind set on replacing Chang as president. Currently, Kang holds the same number of shares as Chang, but if a vote is held and Park votes in her favor, it is very likely they can secure the victory, as Chang has shown weakness in his position in recent years. The rumor of a vote reaches Chang's ears. He invites Mrs. Kang to lunch at his house and expresses his gratitude for supporting the company, hoping she will side with him when the time comes. However, When Mrs. Kang leaves, his assistant shows Chang some photos, which clearly show Park had met with her a few days earlier. This causes the war to begin. Chang's first move is to buy the building where Park's bar is located, increasing the rent by 50% with the intention of forcing them out of business. Furthermore, his contract is about to expire, and Chang is unwilling to renew it. Realizing he has no other options, Park goes to Mrs. Kang to tell her he will sell some of his shares. He needs the money to save his bar. She doesn't understand why he cares so much about the bar, to which Park replies that it's not about the place, but about his people. He cares too much about his friends, as he considers them his family and can't afford to leave them unemployed. At the bar, Ji-seok has a talk with Jang, where she plans to fire him. She believes the attack on the bar is because his father doesn't want him working there, and if she fires him, it will calm the waters. When Park returns and finds out that Ji-seok has fired Jang, he becomes furious with her and tells her that's not how you treat family. They aren't old baggage you throw away when things get tough. Because of this, he calls Jang and asks him to come back, and then he fires Ji-seok, who has shown him she doesn't value people as much as he does. He then informs everyone that he secured enough money for a new location, so things will get better now. Meanwhile, President Chang is planning his next attack. He knows the best way to get rid of Park is by taking his people, so he invites Ji-seok to a very luxurious dinner and offers her a very tempting salary to work for him. However, Ji-seok still remains loyal to Park and rejects the offer. For his part, Ji-hun, who is listening to all this, waits for Ji-seok outside the building and offers to buy her a coffee, as he has something important to talk to her about. There, he uses all his tricks to convince Ji-seok to betray Park, but the young woman stands firm and says they will soon defeat them. Hearing this, Ji-hun laughs and tells her that his family never loses, as they are capable of even killing for victory. He confesses that the day he ran over Park's father, he wasn't actually drunk. It was all revenge for the punch Park gave him at school, a demonstration of what they are willing to do to maintain their pride and status. What Ji-hun doesn't expect is that Ji-seok was recording the conversation on her phone. When he realizes, he chases her into the street and, upon catching her, hits her in front of many people. At that, the young woman starts screaming for help, and a group of people gather to subdue Ji-hun and record what is happening. Immediately, he pulls out a wad of cash and throws it in the air, causing a distraction, and gets away from the scene. Luckily, Park appears at the right moment and lands another punch, reminding us of that day at school. Then, he and his friends subdue Ji-hun until the police arrive to take him away. The next morning, the images of Ji-hun hitting a defenseless girl in the middle of the street are national news. This has affected his father's image, who is gradually losing the respect of his partners in the company. They believe that if he can't control his son, he certainly can't handle all of Janga Industries. Furthermore, with Ji-seok's recording, the public knows that Ji-hun is a murderer and demands that the case be reinvestigated and that his money not be allowed to stand in the way of justice. Therefore, Park believes this is the perfect time for Kang to call for a vote and take over Chang's position. At Janga Industries, Chang meets with Soo and Ji-hun to figure out how to solve the situation. During the meeting, Ji-hun behaves erratically, so Chang ends up kicking him out of his office. He then asks Soo if she has any ideas, to which she responds by telling him he must do something drastic. It's not just about his son. The partners are not happy with his performance, and if he wastes resources protecting Ji-hun, he will sink with him. After hearing this, Chang calls his son and orders him to go to the police station and turn himself in. Meanwhile, he will prepare the best defense, as they did years ago, and will ensure he doesn't set foot in prison. Ji-hun obeys his father and goes to the police station to turn himself in and cooperate with the authorities. While he is waiting at the police station, he sees a statement from Janga Industries on television. His father appears, revealing that Ji-hun acted on his own and that he had no knowledge of anything that happened. He also adds that Ji-hun bribed many people and did everything behind his family's back, making him just another victim of his son's macabre schemes. After the statement, Chang calls Mrs. Kang to his office to brag about how he handled the situation. The public seems to believe him, and the partners will no longer vote to replace him. Shortly after, Ji-hun goes to trial, where he is sentenced to 7 years in prison. During his first week locked up, Soo visits him and brings many documents. Seeing them, Ji-hun believes they are preparing appeals to get him out, but in reality, they force him to sign a waiver of his company shares, proving that his father has decided to betray him completely and leave him penniless. At Park's bar, Hyun appears with a new image. We recall that she is a trans woman and has always been uncomfortable with her appearance. She informs the group that she has registered for a MasterChef-style cooking show and wants to know if she has their support. The team gets excited and tells her she can count on them to cheer her on from the stands. Meanwhile, Jang, who has been closely following what is happening with his brother, goes to his father to tell him he wants to return to the company. Now that Ji-hoon is gone, he wants to be trained as his successor and promises he will do things right. Chang, who could use getting his son back, ends up accepting. He gives him a position in the company, so he can learn everything necessary and become his successor one day. A week later, the competition begins, and Hyun, surprisingly, wins the first round with the highest score, leaving the Jenga chef in second place. This all works wonderfully for the bar, which gets a lot of free publicity and ends up catching the attention of an investor who wants to talk to Park about a possible partnership that will bring many benefits for everyone. Just then, the police show up looking for Tony, whom they fine for putting up hundreds of posters in the streets without permission. It turns out he has been conducting an exhaustive search for his father because he wants to be recognized by him to get his citizenship. For his part, the investor tells Park they will meet later. In the meantime, he sends him to gather all the business owners in the building, as he is interested in investing in all of them. The next day, the second round of the competition takes place, and the result repeats. Hyun takes first place, leaving the competition far behind, and all indications are that she will be the judge's favorite in the final round. Park, who has met with the other business owners in the building, tells them the good news and recommends they make slight improvements to their businesses, so the investors his friend is bringing will be very impressed and increase the money they will be given. The owners listen to him and spend the little money they have available making improvements to their businesses. However, when the time for the meeting arrives, Park and the other owners find an empty office. The office that isn't empty is Chang's, where we can see the supposed investor toasting with him, revealing it was all a ploy to turn the neighbors against Park. Park is now being insulted by everyone, as many spent money they didn't have on the improvements and will now declare bankruptcy because of him. Faced with this, Park begins to think about selling the rest of his shares to solve the problem he caused, although this would mean giving up his revenge plan against Chang and admitting defeat. On the other hand, Tony manages to find his grandmother with the help of Park and the team, and it just so happens she is a very wealthy woman who is obsessed with the cooking show, so she promises to invest in them if Hyun wins the competition. Now the full weight of the situation falls on Hyun, who was already nervous enough about appearing in the final round. At the Jenga offices, Jang, desperately seeking his father's approval, spreads the rumor that Hyun is transgender as a way to damage her image before the competition. When the rumor goes viral, Hyun feels so ashamed that she flees the bar, leaving everyone wondering if she will participate. Later, Seo goes looking for Jang and asks him if he spread the rumor, to which he confesses he did. Consequently, she confronts him for spreading something so delicate. However, Jang tells her he will do whatever is necessary to be his father's successor, as it's what he has always wanted. Fortunately, on the day of the competition, Hyun appears completely renewed and accepts who she is in front of the public, completely destroying Jangda's hopes of winning the competition. With Hyun's victory, she is now the best chef in Korea, and Tony's grandmother fulfills her promise and invests in Park to fix all the problems and improve the building to its best condition. Not far from there, Ji-seok has found out what Jang did and goes looking for him to give him a beating. In that instant, he confesses he has always been in love with her, but since he was never famous or rich, she never looked his way. That's why he is doing all this now, to become the leader of Jongda Industries and be able to win her love. However, Ji-seok tells him that will never happen and leaves him heartbroken. It is here we see a villain is born. Therefore, Jang meets with his father, who for the first time looks at him with pride, seeing he is as treacherous as he is. Now, he might become his worthy successor. We travel 4 years into the future, where we see everything has turned out very well for our protagonists. Park is the owner of the entire building, and it is full of lucrative businesses, while his restaurant has the best chef in Korea. Despite this, things haven't gone so well for Chang, who is still president of Jangda but has been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, so he is confined to the central hospital. Yoon, who got out of prison early for good behavior, visits his father in the hospital, although his father is not happy to see him and tells him to leave because he is no longer his son. On the other hand, we see that Ji-seok has fainted and had to be taken to the hospital. It seems overwork has taken its toll on her, and when they take her to be examined, she runs into Jun. Park, who found out what happened to Ji-seok, buys her a gift and goes to visit her, but it turns out she isn't at the hospital because Jun has kidnapped her. He is holding her captive in a secret location that he only shares with Park, whom he tells to come alone. Jang, who had shown up to visit Ji-seok because he is still in love with her, notices this, so he follows Park to the location June indicated. At the location, both are surprised by Gun's henchmen, who ram them with their cars. In a tense moment, Jang freezes, and Park shoves him out of the way, but as a consequence, Park ends up being run over by one of the bad guys. Because of this, the protagonist is seriously injured, and luckily, Choi appears to help him. However, the subjects take Jang and Jisok with them. Meanwhile, Seo has an argument with Chang, where she accuses him of having raised a monster. She regrets having stayed by his side all these years, and having chosen her job above all else. A few minutes later, Chang receives a call from Ji-eun, who informs him that all he ever wanted was for Chang to be proud of him, but now Chang has forced him to do terrible things, and he, Chan, will also pay for his mistakes. During the call, Yoon gets distracted, and Jang takes the opportunity to free himself and rescue Jisok. He then surprises Jun and gives him a beating with a wooden plank. Back with Chang, he receives a visit from Park, who has escaped from his hospital room to ask him to help find his friends. It is here that Chang repeats what he told him that day at the school. If he kneels before him and requests help, he will receive it. Worried about his friend's safety, Park finally gives in and kneels before the old Chang, who writes an address on a piece of paper and hands it to him. The group hurries to rescue Jisok, who is fleeing from the bad guys chasing her. Fortunately, Park and Choi arrive in time. Choi fights them, as Park is still injured. However, this doesn't stop Park from confronting Gyun, who surprises him from behind. Luckily, our protagonist is victorious, and they subdue the bad guys until the police arrive. Following this, Gyun is sent directly to jail, and Chang will soon be accused of complicity with his son. Taking advantage of this, Mrs. Kang and Tony's grandmother join forces to buy Jangda Industries shares, stripping power from Chang. He shows up at Park's restaurant and kneels before him, apologizing for all the harm he caused him, repenting for having let revenge consume his life. From that moment on, all the pieces fall into place, and our protagonists can live in peace, free from Chang's yoke. At the end of the movie, Ji-seok visits Sue at her new restaurant that she opened. And that's how this series ends. Subscribe, activate notifications, and thanks for watching.